Hello and welcome to the Hope Hotspot. This is our podcast that we have every so often where we try and look into different things going on in and around the church and highlight those to you. So today I'm sat with John Greenall. If you don't know John, you've probably seen him in church. He's very, very tall. He is the Nephilim of Hope Church, I would say. So you can't really miss him. But John, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thanks, Luke. Yeah, I haven't been described as a Nephilim before, so I'll take that as a first. It's great to be here. Yeah, so I'm John. As you say, I'm very tall. I work in paediatrics, so with little kids, which is quite ironic given how big I am. But generally, they don't get that scared of me, which is quite nice. But I just wear my knees out a bit, kneeling on the floor. So I do that part time. But 4 years ago, I started working with the Christian Medical Fellowship, and I work as the national field director. Kind of most of my week doing that.
Great. So that's what we're here a bit to talk about. So could you just tell us, for those of us that don't know, what is the Christian Medical Fellowship?
Yeah, the Christian Medical Fellowship is actually we're celebrating our 70th anniversary, so there's going to be a big cake next month, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, 70 years ago, CMF grew out of the University and Colleges Christian Fellowship, UCCF, sort of doing campus student work and basically realising that there was just a massive need amongst medical students and then also amongst doctors. And now we also encompass nurses and other healthcare workers as well. But a huge need for medics and nurses to understand what it means to be a Christian and to combine faith with work. And the thing is, more people see a doctor than go through the doors of a church. Don't know about you, but we do sometimes see our doctors, and so much of what we do in healthcare around sort of our bodies and our minds and the way that we approach life, and nowadays many more of the big ethical issues, in society. Medicine is intimately involved with those things, and so CMF is about helping unite and equip Christian medics and doctors to live and to speak for Jesus Christ in the places they spend most of their time, because most of their time is spent in the workplace, which obviously for a lot of junior doctors and so on you hear about in the press, but actually it's about what does it look like to be a Christian in those places, to be a witness, but actually also to live and to thrive as a Christian.
Great, and that's obviously really important work in our healthcare system, and a lot with what's happening in the news around that in recent years. Is it kind of? Do you get much kind of openness from people? Do you get much closeness as well? A lot of people say the medical profession is not a place to share your faith, and that actually it should be a professional place. How does that work into the Christian Medical Fellowship?
Yeah, it's a great question. The things that we do in CMF are we help connect people. So just connecting on the wards, connecting in the surgeries. We help them to grow in their faith and apply that things to medicine. And then we help them to speak out, and that's really what you're referring to. And we help them to share their faith. Oftentimes, that sharing of faith comes with other colleagues. It comes with your peers, it comes with your friends who you work with. But also, we have freedom to speak about things of faith. So we have openness to explore and to help patients explore their spirituality. We're encouraged to do that as we ask questions, and we're able, when it's appropriate and when invited to actually share our own faith. And that is a challenge. In a secular society which says, well, leave your faith at home. Faith is a privatized thing. It shouldn't come into every day. Well, what I tend to say is that's a myth. The idea that you can be neutral, the idea that the secularist doesn't bring any of their values into their decision making is a complete myth. Everybody has assumptions. Everybody has what we call a worldview that they bring in, and that does impact the way that we practice medicine, whether we acknowledge it or we don't. And what you'll find is that Christians and many members of other faiths will often acknowledge that. Whereas those who say they have no faith often will see themselves as more neutral. So I believe we do have a role in sharing our faith in medicine and pointing to the great physician, Jesus Christ, who can bring wholeness. But of course we do that must do that in a very sensitive way. We're not there primarily to share faith. We're there to do our jobs. But actually I say it as part of that, being a good doctor, being a good nurse, is actually bringing our whole selves to work and being able to share who we are, what we believe, and that we believe that it points to fullness of life in Jesus.
That's great. And so how long have you yourself been in kind of the medical profession? And maybe just give us a talk through what does your average week look like, including your work with CMF, but as a paediatrician as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I qualified 12 years ago, so I've trained as a paediatrician, so I do some acute work in the hospital, so walking the wards, A&E. So if a child comes from a GP or from A&E and they need to see a children's doctor, they'll come to me. We do some clinic work as well, and then I also work in the community. So that's with more long-term conditions, neurodevelopmental conditions like autism and ADHD and other things like cerebral palsy. So I do a lot of that. I really enjoy that. I do that sort of a day and a half, 2 days a week. The rest of my time is spent with CMF, and my role really is to develop leaders really within CMF. That's really my heart, is to develop people and to see what gifts they've got and to encourage them. So I'm involved in establishing a lot of leadership programs, so helping people who have got specific abilities. For example, just today I was developing one of our speakers tracks, where we get people who are effective speakers and who are deep thinkers, and we train them up to do that better, to engage in the big issues of the day, such as end of life issues, beginning of life issues, gender issues, identity issues, just to helping them to grow in that way. I also travel around, so today I'm off to Oxford, I'll be off in Edinburgh next week, where we are looking to set up and equip local leadership groups and give them the resources that they need. And my role really is to go and envision them, to tell them about CMF, to say how we can support them. And I support a network of team leaders around the country. I link them together. I often don't do a lot. My role really is to link people together. I love it when you just put great people together. And actually, so oftentimes the work that God does in their lives, the way that God speaks through each of them to each other, I can just sit back and watch it happen. So I'm really an enabler. I've just got to put people together, give them the tools, give them the opportunities, and then just seeing God do things through them. So I travel a bit, I write, I go and speak at different events, and I spend time in my study writing papers and having Skype conversations with people across the country. That's generally my week.
Great, and I mean that kind of role of putting people together and making conversations happen is really important. Just to encourage you there, that it's not just not, you're not seeing everything, but you're able to actually glue things together and then step back and see God work, basically. So for those that are listening and thinking Christian Medical Fellowship, well, I'm nowhere near the Christian. I'm nowhere near the medical world. Perhaps they may not have been into a hospital themselves in a long time. I know I haven't been in a hospital, thank God, since I was born. But people might be like, well, I'm a world away from that. I don't really engage with that. What relevance do you think that this ministry has to them?
Great, and obviously there will be some people who it is very relevant to, and if you are in that bracket, if you're working in healthcare, you're welcome to visit our website, cmf.org.uk, and we have you can join up, and we can have sort of member benefits and so on, and we have conferences and events that you can benefit from, and also a local group. I think next week there's a local group meeting here in Luton. But yeah, you're right. I'm a teacher. I'm unemployed. What does this relevance have to me? Well, a lot of the stuff that we produce is to help churches and to help everyday people like you and I to just understand some of the issues. And it is important, I think, that some of these issues that as Christians we're grappling with them. So issues of identity, issues of sexuality, issues of meaning at the end of life. We all go through periods of health crisis, often suffering, which makes us question these basic assumptions of life. And so actually, because healthcare is usually often at the forefront of some of those areas, there are a lot of people in CMF over the last 70 years have done a lot of thinking. So there's good resources for the church and for individuals to gain from by visiting our website and just seeing what we do. But I think even more broadly than that, is what we do is about workplace ministry. It's about the whole concept that actually our faith and our work matter. And that what we do, and you may think, it's more obvious, you're a doctor, you're obviously helping people, but the fact is we've been created to glorify God in every part of our life. And actually, as we think about the opportunities that we have to glorify God by being thankful for a new day, by seeing the work that we do as being valuable, and contributing to the well-being of the city, the well-being of other people. So what CMF does, I think, is it's been going a long time. It's an example of a way that whatever profession you're in, or even if you're not working at the moment, or if you're a stay-at-home mum, that actually every moment of every day is to glorify God. And we can say, God, how can I serve you today? How can I be a blessing to other people? How can I grow in my faith as I do perhaps some mundane and menial things? And I do many of those things in my job, although I may not have made it sound like that, but the mundane emails and meetings and some of those things. How can they glorify God? So I think CMF is about glorifying God in the workplace, the places we spend most of our time, and that is something that I think all of us can do. We've got some resources that can help everybody with that, but I'd encourage you, if you're doing other things, to think, how can I glorify God, and how can I get together with other people in a similar situation to me to encourage them and to equip one another to glorify God in the everyday.
That's great. And I mean, not to go too in depth into it, but just touching on a few of the things, you've done a few talks here at Hope Church and as part of missional around kind of mental health and the church and the transgender agenda. Just explain a little bit to us kind of how actually there can be people around us who are affected by these different things, and how we as Christians, it is important for us to be able to know, even if we don't necessarily engage in a large way, but to know that there are people around us who struggle with these things.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, look, any one point in the church, 1% of people are feeling suicidal. 1 in 10 people are struggling with significant mental health problems. In a church, 1 in 4 people on average will have been victims of childhood abuse. The list goes on and on: alcohol, addictions, dependency, physical health problems, cancer, struggles with children's behaviour. These are all areas that healthcare touches on. So we are all we're all touched, if you like, by issues that affect us physically, that affect us emotionally. And for the Christian worldview, we say that the world was perfect, but the fall means that we're disconnected. We're disconnected from God, and we're disconnected from one another. And actually, we're disconnected within ourselves. There's this kind of tension point where we're not who we should be. And that affects us all in different ways. And that affects us physically, emotionally, and it can affect us in ways that affect the core of our identity. So gender issues, for example, the very core of our identity as a male or a female can be affected. And for some people, that means that they can struggle with their very identity. And they can go to extreme measures to change their appearance. And obviously the medical profession can be very much then engaged and involved in that. Issue of abortion, the number of people that have gone through an abortion in the past. The list could go on and on. The fact is that this is real stuff, and I think all of us struggle in one or more of those areas. And just by looking at each other, we don't know that. We sometimes assume that everyone else has it sorted, but that we haven't. But the great news of Jesus is that he gives us wholeness at the cross. We experience some of that in the today, but the hope is that in future, in heaven, our certain hope is that we'll be made whole. And so what things that I speak on, I'm going to speak shortly, and you might listen to this either before or after I've spoken on the 30th of June on the mind-body split, and how actually we're whole people. We're minds, we're bodies, they're not separate. It's not that we say that relegate the body to second place and say, well, the body isn't important and I'll do whatever I want with the body. It's the real me is inside of. Actually, we're made as whole people. And that's biblical, it's theology, but actually it also profoundly impacts the way we think about our health and the way we think about what it means to be a human being. And I'm hopefully in future we'll be talking about other things like robotics and what does it mean to be a human? Why can't robots do the same things as human? What actually does it mean to be different from the animal kingdom or from robots? So I don't know if I've answered your question, but these are the kind of things I love thinking about, and I think as a church we really need to be engaging in, because these are questions that people are asking, and it can be a barrier to some in faith when people say, oh, the church are bigoted and they hate everybody who's struggles with this, that or the other. No, the message is that actually the love of Christ is for everybody. Jesus deeply loves every single person wherever they are, but he loves us so much that he doesn't want to leave us where we are. He wants to bring us to wholeness in him. And that's the good news of the gospel.
Amen. Well, thank you for that, John. And I look forward to hearing that message on the 30th of June. And if you're listening to this after the 30th of June, I'm sure you can find it on our website, as well as those other resources about talking about mental health in the church and transgender agenda are all on our Hope Church website if you want to go and check those out. So just lastly, was there anything else you wanted to add, John? And also just let us know if people, again, where can they find out more about CMF or some of your writings and blogs and that kind of thing?
Great, yeah, thanks. So I have got a bit of a dormant blog that I run called the address is johngreenall.blogspot.co.uk. But organisationally, we've got cmf.org.uk, and that's really the hub. And if you do /resources, there's a whole range of resources. You can search stuff that I've written about, but if you want some really good quality stuff, you can just search on that issue. And we've got a number of files, a number of discussion papers that you can use if you like, a number of prayer prompts as well. So yeah, I just point people to that. And obviously, if you see me around, I'm the tallest person around, very happy to chat. I just say, I haven't got it all sorted. I love learning about these things. It's challenging for me and for all of us intellectually, but actually at the heart of it, it's just challenging to see every day our need for the Lord. And I may sit here and speak and think, I can confidently talk about this, but I tell you what, every day I'm just dependent on God for His grace, and I need Him. So if you're someone who prays, I'd appreciate your prayers for CMF. I appreciate your prayers for those who are particularly on the front line, speaking out about these issues, speaking up for the vulnerable. You're not always popular for doing so, but just prayers for God's protection and enabling in those spheres as we seek to live and speak for Jesus.
Well, thank you again for speaking to me, John, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.